She launched her creative studio RoAndCo in 2006 to create and collaborate with the people who inspired her. In 2010, she was named by the New York Times T Magazine as one of New York City's most outstanding up-and-coming design professionals. Thank you. Seriously. In 2011, she was among the winners of the ADC's Young Guns Award. She has given numerous talks on her unique branding process and experience as a business owner and leader. Please welcome to the stage Roanne Adams.
Down here. Hi guys, it's true, you can't see anybody. All right, let's see if I can do this. So, I'm Roanne Adams. Good evening, bonsoir. Nice to be here. Thank you, Dynamic, for having me. So, I'm the creative director and founder of RoAndCo, but I'm just going to go back and talk a little bit about me in my early years. So, I was born and raised in Connecticut, which is not the capital of graphic design or fashion. But it is 45 minutes away from New York City, and it's loaded with rich people who buy really nice brands and drive really nice cars. So I became obsessed very early on with wanting what I did not have. Anything from Mercedes to, Chanel No. 5. So an amazing thing happened when I was 11. My dad's job, he worked for IBM for about 30 years, got transferred to Paris, and my brand obsession or my American kid lifestyle turned into sort of a cultural renaissance. And I got to, live as an American in Paris, which is everyone's dream, right? Or Montreal. So, I got to take painting classes at the Louvre. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I actually did. And I also did a summer program at Beaux-Arts, and, was terrible at, keeping up with the French artists, but at least, I got a good lesson in, how to feel like an artist or, whatever that was. So I had this, mixture of, American background and, sort of Parisian the influence in my life. And then I became very obsessed with things that were coming out of England. At the time, living in Paris, we didn't have much access to American things. I think there was one American store, which we went only to buy like Reese's peanut butter cups and things like that, Cheetos. But there was a lot of British magazines, so I would buy these magazines to, read things in English, and then I watched a shit ton of MTV Europe. So I became obsessed with, music, especially, Pulp and Suede and Radiohead. And I looked at these magazines incessantly, The Face, ID, Dazed and Confused. And, I didn't really understand who was creating these things. I just saw the images and became really into fashion and graphics, and later understood that there were sort of designers and art directors behind all of this. I also only dated exclusively skateboarders. My husband's in the front row. He is one of them. We've been together since my 16th birthday. But so skateboard graphics were really inspiring for me as well. I felt like it was interesting because skateboarding brands were reappropriating, what other brands were doing, from like what a cereal brand was doing to what a fashion brand was doing. And I love that cultural appropriation in that way. So from early on, I knew that I wanted to live in New York City. I think just the proximity, Connecticut had to New York, and going in and visiting. And I knew that I wanted to attend Parsons School of Design. So my husband and I actually both went there together. We would take painting classes there after school, nude painting classes. So I was, a little bit insecure about my husband painting these nude women, but it was okay. Sometimes there was men. Anyways, I'm really going off the topic, but New York City was pretty much the only place that I could go after Paris. It was the only place that I could imagine myself forming a career and becoming an art director. So I formed this company, RoAndCo. And this was really just because I had this desire to, become a graphic designer, to art direct photo shoots, to, connect with entrepreneurs, designers. I really wanted to collaborate with photographers. I should go back and say that I did work at Wolf Olins for 3 years after school. And I learned about sort of big picture branding, how you come up with an idea and how you spread that across every brand touch point. So I wanted to apply this, big picture branding to smaller brands who didn't have any budgets. So I started this business, right at the onset of the recession, which was actually good for me because I was really dirt cheap compared to all the other agencies in New York. So we just celebrated 10 years of RoAndCo. Woohoo! Thank you, thank you, thank you. Makes me feel a little bit old, but at least I didn't go to college in the 80s, so I feel like a spring chicken. So with the 10-year anniversary, I decided I needed to start something new. So I decided, instead of doing the smart thing, which would be probably doing like a tech startup, venture-backed or something like that, I decided to start a print magazine, which makes no money. It just bloodlets money. But it's fulfilling me in other ways, in creative ways. I think after servicing clients for 10 plus years, you do sort of come to a point where you need not just a creative outlet, but you need to really dig deep and search inside of your soul and find what creatively inspires you, and sort of go back to that feeling of being, an American in Paris and discovering things for the first time again. So this magazine does not sell clothes. It does not sell any products. It sells the idea that we can all evolve as humans and that our consciousness is waiting for us to evolve. So we interviewed 10 successful, amazing women. This is Norma Kamali. She's in her 70s. She's a beautiful, incredible woman who's been designing clothes since the 60s. This is the list of women. This is our contents page. And all of the women in here are people that have inspired me over the years. Sophie went to Parsons with me. She's a jewelry designer and a fashion designer. And they all speak very truthfully about their emotions. So every issue is based on a theme, and the first theme being emotions. I asked these women, not just about their careers and how they got there, but what their emotional journey was along the way, and what kind of challenges they faced, and if they did have challenges or midlife crises or whatever, how they got through that and how they carried on with their path. We worked with one photographer named Robin Stein on the first issue, and he shot everything from the women to these floral still lifes. So the flowers themselves sort of represent emotions from joy to fear to, you name it, anxiety. And all of these women were incredibly inspiring to speak with. And in a way, for me, starting something new is, you're in a vulnerable position. You're not totally sure how people are going to, take what you're doing and understand it and believe in it. But these women, with every interview that I conducted with them, they gave me more and more kind of strength to do this. And we just sold out of our first issue, which was very exciting, and we're on to our second. So that's just a quick thing about Romance Journal. You should all buy it. Anyways, okay, so back to RoAndCo. So we're a strategic and creative studio, and we bring thought, relevance, and style to forward-thinking brands. We work with a lot of fashion and tech brands, brands from small independent designers to enormous companies like Google. And we believe that branding is not just a logo, it's a collection of behaviors. So a lot about, sort of how a brand behaves is what we talk about at RoAndCo with my team is, not just about, coming up with something that looks good, but something that can communicate an idea across an ecosystem. And, over the years, working with fashion brands in particular and tech brands, it's become very clear that e-commerce is at the center of the ecosystem. It really is the most visible place to tell a story. I know Instagram is as well, but I think that e-commerce has become that, brand flagship. So like a flagship store, brands really need to think about, building a strong brand foundation. Like a bricks and mortar store, we always, lay the concrete foundation. We make sure that the, plumbing is in. We make sure that all of those foundational elements are there. We believe that, you have to build a strong brand foundation so that the e-commerce store can live and thrive. Even though it's alive every single day and changing, you need to understand sort of where that brand idea is coming from. And this evolving ecosystem of, now the next thing is Snapchat, now the next thing is Instagram stories, now the next thing is, who knows what. You need to have that brand foundation, those ideas there in place before, jumping on board with the next technology that comes along. So I'm going to talk about 3 brands that we've worked with over the years. All 3 of them take different approaches in a sense, but they're all fashion brands, so they have this sort of thread throughout that is a commonality. So the first being Honor, a brand that we built from scratch, and we really applied, again, what I learned at Wolf Olins, the sort of tried and true branding practices to this brand, and built it designing with timeless principles. And then the second being Moda Operandi, an e-commerce platform, multi-brand platform for pre-ordering. We really had to work on reimagining the luxury online experience through this process. And then the third being Loeffler Randall, an accessories brand that has this sort of evolving ecosystem that every brand now has, but we really helped create that ecosystem for them and plug into the way that a fashion brand behaves. So Honor first. Is for us about building a luxury brand with timeless design principles. This brand was started by a woman named Giovanna Randall in 2010. She founded the brand with the name Honor, which is actually her sister's name. So right off the bat, there was a family element to the brand. She came to us with, just sketches of dresses. She didn't have any other ideas beyond that, but I could tell right off the bat that she had really good taste and a vision for what she wanted. So, in a lot of ways, we're creating this brand alongside the person, and it almost becomes that they're like the muse for the brand. So I really wanted to dig into, what she was all about and what she wanted to express, and she kept telling me that she wanted the brand to have this established feeling right out of the gates, and she wanted it to have this nod to the past. She wanted it to feel as though it was, like a Parisian brand, like a Lanvin or a Chanel that lived in the past but has been brought into the present and into an American New York setting. So this is the logo that we created for them, and being that Honor is this very strong name and symmetrical name, and also being that the clothes were very feminine, we wanted to create a logo that would be a sort of a counterpart to the femininity and sort of the whimsical nature of the brand. We wanted something that would be able to be strong and hold up on its own, and also be able to sort of embody the story of each collection. We played around with the logo a lot. I mean, we had a lot of fun with it. This was a 3D creation that we made that was supposed to sort of look like crown molding. We also built out a custom typeface based on the logo, as you can see there. This is an example of an invitation to the runway show. And to sort of make sure that the brand had some solid foundation, we created this tagline, Honor the Past and Honor the Present, which is all about taking what she's inspired by from the past, her mother's wardrobe, her grandmother's wardrobe, old films, all that inspiration, and bringing it into the present moment, making sure that the brand felt very contemporary as well. So that seal, or that coat of arms that we created, made its way onto buttons. Obviously, it was blind embossed onto the stationery. And these are just, the beginning foundational elements of the brand that we created. Then when they opened a brick and mortar store in the meatpacking district, we collaborated with their interior design company to create this 3D light box for the signage covered in brass. So it's always fun to us to see these things sort of come to life. For the first collection, she was actually inspired by old French films. You know, she actually wanted it to have this feeling of being an American in Paris, which I was very familiar with. So we dug back into, sorry, my mic is weird. We dug back into, you know, old films like, oh God, now I can't remember, Le Ballon Rouge, if you're familiar with it, and some Catherine Deneuve films. I'm just drawing a blank right now. And she had this signature pattern that she really loved that we wanted to put on everything. And she ate like cakes every single day. So this was a thing that she always wanted to have, like a sweet confection every season. So for the VIP invitation, we came up with the idea of having a box of 8 macaroons hand delivered to, you know, the likes of Anna Wintour to get them to, you know, hear about honor and hopefully show up at the fashion show, which thankfully a lot of amazing people did. And Style.com wrote this invitation up as one of the best of the season. This was a photo shoot that we did for the collection with a photographer named Katie Auletta. And we shot it at this now hotel, but it was a vacant building called 5 Beekman in Wall Street, around Wall Street. We wanted it to have this sort of femme fatale feeling mixed with Le Ballon Rouge. So we made like a little film. I'm only going to show you a tiny clip of it, just to give you a sense of the vibe.
Mais non plus détenue par ses murs. Elle s'est mise à la recherche de l'impossible.
So I worked with a friend of mine, Caroline Polachek, who was actually in Romance Journal issue 1. She's a musician. She was the lead singer of the band Chairlift. She did the voiceover for the video, and she also helped compose the music with one of our friends who's also a musician. So you know, super fun being able to collaborate with not only photographers and prop stylists and stylists, but to also work with composers and musicians. So this was second season. We went from being inspired by all things Parisian to a discount shopping store in the tri-state, which is called Caldor. I don't know if any of you would be familiar with it, but it was you know, a store that existed for us back in like the 80s. I think it went out of business in the 90s. But Giovanna, the designer, was having this memory of being a little girl in her princess phase, and her mom took her to Caldor, and Caldor was falling apart, essentially going out of business. The lights were flickering. She said that there was no products on the shelves. She saw a bologna sandwich sitting by itself, half eaten, and she, again, was in her princess phase, so she was thinking, oh, this mundane environment, I am this beautiful princess warrior in this mundane environment. So her whole entire collection was based off of this moment she had, or memory she had in Caldor, which is really fascinating for me because it's such a bizarre combination, and I used to go shopping at Caldor with my mom, so it was nice to have this understanding of where she was coming from, and this combination of a very mundane experience with a dreamlike experience of being a princess warrior combined into one. So we combined different materials, obviously, like the gold with the craft papers, the combination of high and low. The sort of shapes that you see are all inspired by the Caldor buildings, which were all very like brutal architecture. They had no windows. And we also did a collaboration with a really high-end chocolate company called Fine and Raw, but made it into like a Hershey bar shape. So you get those chocolate bars at the runway show. So that's Caldor over there, you can see, and this is a mood board that we put together for a photo shoot and a film. And at the time, fashion films were becoming all the rage. So we worked with a photographer/director named Todd Cole, who had been just working with Rodarte on fashion films, so he was sort of like the hot guy in town that we had to get. And we just came up with this idea that we needed to go shoot this warrior princess figure in either a really mundane parking lot, like Caldor parking lot, or in a beautiful desert environment. And so we decided to do both. We went to Death Valley, which is in California. It's the most beautiful place I've ever been. This is an area called the Artist Palette. You see in the background all these different colors. It was really an incredible backdrop for a photo shoot. And then the little film that we created, I'm just going to show you a minute of it, but the idea behind it was there's this sort of average girl. She's not average looking by any chance, by any stretch of the imagination, but this average girl who's working at Caldor. She's living this very mundane life, driving a Volvo. That was the only car we could get out there, unfortunately. We wanted to get like a Datsun or something. And then she goes into this like dream state where, she is wearing these incredible, warrior princess outfits in the desert. This model was such a trooper. She's wearing like 5-inch heels on these mountains. I couldn't even believe it. And she just like ran down this thing. And I tried running after her and like slipped and fell. I was like, okay, I'm gonna stay up in the high perch. So again, we worked with a composer to give it this sort of nostalgic sound, but mixed with a contemporary feeling. And I'm going to end it here because it's very long for our short attention spans. It was made like 8 years ago when our attention spans were like at least, 5 minutes long. Now they're now they're 20 seconds long. Okay, so this is third season. As you can see, sort of every season we would, always go to the designer first, to Giovanna, and ask her, what's your inspiration for the collection? And then create something completely new with it that, hopefully would feel very honor-like, but would, change every season. So this third season, she was inspired by these books that she had as a child called the Lonely Dolls books. So the invitation itself is almost like an abstraction of a dollhouse, a blueprint for a dollhouse. And we collaborated with Papa Bubble, this candy company, to make little honor candies for the runway show. And then the lookbook we shot on the water, the clothes themselves, this collection, were really sort of like these bright pop colors, very like saturated feeling. So we wanted the feeling of the clothes to really pop off the background, and we wanted the models themselves to feel very sort of lonely and waxy like dolls. So just starting to figure out e-commerce, this was probably 8 years ago. We built this site for them. It was hard even getting them onto e-commerce at the time, which was interesting because at the time, a lot of luxury brands were hesitant to go online. They felt like it could potentially water down that exclusivity feeling. These dresses cost about, say like $2,000, so it was a big jump to go online. And even going on something like Facebook was like death to the brand. But brands like Prada and Miu Miu were all of a sudden doing this. They were, launching their e-commerce sites. They were going on Facebook. And so brands like Honor were like, okay, I guess we should do it too. Which is interesting because now, we've evolved into a place where the e-commerce almost comes first. Brands are coming to us and saying they need an e-commerce site. And we're like, wait, I think you need a brand first, then an e-commerce site. Call me old-fashioned. This was email marketing. We were just figuring out how to get an email marketing calendar together and what the cadence of that would be and what the rhythms would be, how often they should send it out. They don't want to overexpose the brand, but they also want to drive sales to the website. So it was all, a learning process. And this was an ad that we ran in T-Style magazine. So we're starting to create the ecosystem. We're starting to create these different touch points that all need to kind of talk to each other and drive new customers to the website and existing customers back through email marketing. So it was a learning process for us to go through, but a very exciting project to work on over the years. So this is just to show you, I think 7 years of work for Honor. Not everything's here, obviously, but there's a lot of work that went into it, and an incredible brand to work with. So Moda. Moda Operandi is the first brand to really imagine the idea that they could create a shopping directly off the runway experience. So Lauren Santo Domingo is actually someone that I've known for many years. She grew up in Connecticut. And so it always helps to grow up in a rich place. I'm just kidding. It will someday come back to you. No. So the first online destination to shop straight off the runway, she had this idea. She's a Vogue contributor. She's an insider in the fashion community. She knows every brand. She goes to every party. She knows everybody in the fashion industry. So how can she leverage this sort of access that she has and bring it to the world? And it was a huge undertaking, but she was able to do it, which was incredible. So they first launched a digital experience which allowed people to pre-order off the runway, but in my opinion, that experience was nowhere on par with the sort of brands that they were actually selling. So they needed to, come to RoAndCo to give them that best-in-class e-commerce experience, to both merge that insider access with editorialized perspectives. So this is where they were when they came to us. This is the website that they had, the logo and palette that they had, the website. It was like sort of the beta first iteration of the site, and it was a completely new way of shopping. So kudos to them for doing it, but it needed a lot of love and help. So what we first did was we said, we know you want us to design you a new website, but we're incapable of doing that. We actually have to go through a bit of a branding process, even if it's just like a quick week-long process. So we'll show you a few different iterations of your brand, and hopefully we can move the needle a little bit closer to where we want to be, which is, Lauren was very into powder pink at the time. She was very into gold. So we always like to collaborate with our clients and make sure that they're heard and make sure that they're understood, even if it's not where we necessarily want to go. But it always makes for a better experience, I think, for everyone, to make sure that a client is happy with what they're receiving, because ultimately they are in charge of this living, breathing brand and e-commerce site that's going to change every day. So this is one of the directions that we presented. This is the site design, round one design, sort of getting to a bit more of a clean space, making sure that Moda Operandi's logo is front and center, because even though it's a multi-brand store and it needs to kind of take a neutral position with all the brands inside and let those brands be the hero, it also needs to have an emotional connection with customers. It also needs to stand out as well. And then this was the other direction that we wanted to go down. Again, this powdery pink thing kept coming back up, but that's what she wanted. This is, like, what if we took the logo and made it black? Maybe it doesn't need to be gold. And this was the other site design that we came up with, sort of left the line, maybe making it just like a bit more contemporary feeling, but also bringing in the editorialized perspective, which is something that they didn't have in their former platform. So this is where we ended up, sort of a hybrid of the two. What was a big game changer for us, was being able to take the curatorial perspective of Moda, the editorialized perspective, and merge it with the pre-order commerce experience. This is something that hadn't really been done before. There was either Vogue.com or Style.com, where you couldn't buy anything, or there was e-commerce shopping stores where there was no editorialized perspective. And also because it's a tech VC-backed company, we needed to make sure that the customer understands this new way of shopping, that you can shop off the runway, and await these items in the next 6 months and don't freak out that they're not coming to your doorstep next week. So this is the site that we launched with, which allowed them to really play with modules, be able to shop lookbooks. The pre-order section would show you which season you're in, and then trend stories throughout, again, bringing that editorialized perspective, that insider access feeling. We were very insistent that Lauren needed to give us that understanding of why she chose Peter Pilotto, for example, as one of the brands to showcase, and show every little detail of the runway so that when you're ordering, you really feel like you're immersed in the runway experience itself, or as close to it as possible. Making sure that there was like interactions, video, shoppable product, behind the scenes, and a little bit about the designers, because ultimately it's these designer relationships that Moda has that keep it relevant. And then the boutique was the other vertical of the business, which is the shop now and get it now, but bringing in those editorialized, trend-driven stories within the grid. And making sure that those also had, lookbook features where you could shop the lookbook and get the look. So with a brand like this, we're dealing with a boardroom full of CTOs, CMOs, new CEO. We have Lauren. We have, project managers galore, and sort of the one thing that made this site a real success was having that relationship with Lauren Santo Domingo, having the relationship where I could say, is this what you want? And she would say yes, or she would say no, or she would say, I want it to be more immersive. I want it to really feel like, and having that direct-to-founder relationship has always been so inspiring for me and so important to my team for the success of projects. So in addition to working on Moda's actual site, we also help them pitch brands like Dolce & Gabbana. So at the time, Dolce & Gabbana had no e-commerce site, and really Moda wanted to be able to be the first place that they would sell online. So putting together these pitch presentations for Lauren and their CEO to go present to Dolce is ultimately how they got those brands on board to be sort of like the marquee brand. So this just shows you the before and after of the site. And now, this site is 3.5, 4 years old, so it almost feels out of date, but at the time it was, we had nothing else to compare it to. Okay, so Loeffler Randall is a brand that we've been working with for, I'd say 7 years now, and, we took them from, a very small brand, accessories brand, to a much bigger brand over the past 6 years, and it's been an incredible experience. But we really started to understand the fashion ecosystem and what's involved now in the digital age through this brand. So Jesse and Brian are a married couple. They own the company, and they design footwear and accessories. And so this logo actually came off of their wedding invitation. Brian used to work in the advertising industry, and he created this logo. So when you work with a husband and wife couple, you know that there's like an emotional relationship happening, and that there are certain things that are dear to their heart that you might not be able to change. But with time, I was able to gain their trust. But so when they hired us, they were already an award-winning brand. They were a small brand, but they had already won a CFDA award, and they already had a following of like cool downtown girls in New York and LA, and so it was very on par with my team, which is comprised of all girls right now. And we wanted to help them expand their brand and just be their creative partner. So this was the logo, like I had mentioned, and we were able to streamline it and create something that we felt was just a bit more clean and contemporary. And then from there, create their packaging and design patterns for their hang tags and their dust bags and the interior of boxes. And we help sculpt their brand story. We did everything for them, from art directing all of their photo shoots to the 360 approach to branding, I guess. So these are their lookbooks, which we sort of standardized over the years and made, just feel very cohesive. So along with the photography style, the customers would get to know this brand, despite having a very sort of simple, subtle logo and a somewhat hard name to remember. We wanted people to get to know them through their photography style and through their graphic style. So this concept of multiplicity kept coming around. Jesse and I would talk about how we really wanted the accessories to stand out in these shoots. We didn't want it to be about, the full outfit. We want it to be about the handbags and the shoes. So how about take, one dress and pair it two ways with, two different shoes or two different bags, for example. And then we would set up the still life shoot on the side and, try to maximize the day. Create this very flexible system for the lookbooks, easy to manipulate these images in post-production, and also easy to, update the website. So this is their e-commerce store, which we designed. It's really become their flagship. They don't have a brick and mortar store, so they have live chat functionality, and they have inspirational posts about women they're inspired by. And they also have, LR Loves section. It was important to them to have a very easy to navigate, best in practice website. And I think that, through being able to create all of these assets for a brand, it makes for a rich e-commerce experience. We know the brand inside out. We've art directed all of the shoots. We understand the tone of voice and how they should behave as a brand. And then, getting into the details of refining and making sure that the images are extremely clear and crisp so that you can just feel like you've touched that shoe. This is all really boring, I know, but this is part of the job. Customer reviews, very exciting, very necessary. And then the about the brand corresponds with the brand book that we created. So the print and the digital experience are cohesive. And their wholesale partners and their customers and everyone gets it. So this just shows you the mobile experience and how it is sort of a simplified version of the site, yet very shoppable. And there you have it. So beyond that, we would, help with creating Instagram assets. Again, making sure that each section of this ecosystem is cohesive and is kind of speaking to each other. And advertising, making sure that the magazines that we advertise in are appropriate for the audience. This is T-Style magazine. And then season after season, making sure that, oops, it just started on its own. And go. Okay. Season after season, making sure that there's this cohesive, very Loeffler Randall-esque photography style everyone gets to know. And we've worked with different photographers over the years, so there's a little bit of a different feeling, but all in all, this very graphic sensibility, because the shoes themselves are quite graphic and punchy and colorful and trendy and exciting and cool. We love playing with logos. Isn't that fun to play with a logo? And we love working with prop stylists, especially creating big plinths that a girl can drape themselves over. Makes for a very easy photo shoot. And then out-of-home advertising. So, this is very fun for us to be able to work on, down to the banner ad. Look at that. See that? Finery 29. So this is the last shoot that we worked on with them. You know, wanting to get their photography style to maybe a bit more of a clean, subtle approach, less graphic design-y feeling, more elevated, yet like simple and subtle, like their brand is in a way, you know. Making sure that the product itself is the hero. That's our job. So this is the lookbook. And then we ran the ads in the Bedford L stop. If any of you have been there, it's the most crowded subway stop in all of New York City. There are millions and millions and millions of impressions. So we had these ads up for all of September, which in New York is the big month because it's September Fashion Week. It's, you know, the September issue of Vogue. So this was, you know, it looks grimy, but this was a big deal. And, you know, always needing to drive back to the website. So email marketing. So the ecosystem, you know, it's a fun thing to work on. Eh? And again, just showing you, you know, 6, 7 years. I've lost track of how many years of having this amazing relationship with Loeffler Randall. So just a summary. One of the things that we always talk about at RoAndCo is capturing the balance. We talk about balancing masculine, feminine. We talk about balancing old and new. We talk about, you know, merging timeless design principles with this ever-evolving technology to bring brands to life. That's really what we're passionate about, is being able to apply these design sensibilities and our love of design and use technology to make them come to life. And then always considering how the message is delivered across this ecosystem, from social to e-commerce to advertising and back again. And like I said, leveraging technology to tell brand stories and to evoke emotion in people, to connect with customers. And finally, we always challenge and move beyond what's already been done, so don't do anything I just did. I won't either. Okay, thank you. Merci.